I would like to propose a quick interview, which I believe would be an interesting format, between Yaky and Yanay, who talked before, CEO and President at Pluri Inc. and Chairman of Ever After Food, together with Tal Shmueli, partner at Texas Venture Partners, a VC based in the US, and having this discussion between a company in the space and an investor, I believe, can open a lot of a larger angle to the topic, and that will be a transition to what the panel will have later on, with Tal and Boaz Lifshitz as VC investors. So please, Yaky and Tal, the floor is yours.
So I know Tal for I think over a year, when I got a call from him and introduced me to one of my board members, Lorne Apney, in Texas. And that was originally how we started and getting introduced. And immediately on October 7th, I got a phone call. And Tal I'll introduce himself in just a minute, who is based in Texas. And they say how we can help. And a few months or a couple of months later, I got a call from Tal and Lorne and said, we are building a fund that's going to specifically invest in Israel, and that's going to be a Texas fund. So Tal, first of all, I would like to thank you, even though you are Israeli, and but they're making all the way from Texas to here to give some insight of what's going on. But I'll be more than happy that you can share with us the story of how did you get to build a fund, Texas fund that is investing in Israeli tech, and also specifically in cultivated food. That's one of the expertise. So give us some background of how it happened.
Thank you, Yaky. Thank you, Didier. Fun to be in Israel after so long. I've been away for 5 months. Throughout all of this time, the country is at war. My brother was fighting in Gaza. I didn't know what country I'm going to see again after 5 months away. So being here in this room, seeing everything that's going on, it fills me up in a way that I didn't foresee. So thank you for this opportunity. It's also a very unusual room for a person like me to be in. I'm not your typical life sciences person. I'm a high school dropout from Ra'anana, a combat soldier, no 8200, nothing fancy. I hustled my way into building an AI startup in Texas. And when the war broke out and my startup started sinking, we figured we need to do something. So that's a bit of my background, and maybe go a little deeper into the fund. We're also not your typical fund, and I'll explain why, but about a month into the war, I get a phone call from Lorne. I've met Lorne for the community in Austin. Lorne is Canadian. He chose Texas as his home base after spending 18 years as CEO of public companies, youngest CEO ever of a public company in Canada. And after trying to donate and fundraise and host emergency events and joining rallies, he calls me one Friday afternoon, and pardon my language, but he goes, Tal, I don't mean to be rude, but if what I'm hearing from my investor friends is true, your startup is fucked. I'm like, well, good afternoon to you too. But you're not being rude, you're being right. Myself and other Israeli entrepreneurs found ourselves in a very problematic situation. Much of our teams are being quitted, our families are fighting. Capital was not available to us. Investors wouldn't pick up the phone, sometimes because of motives that we don't approve, and sometimes because they didn't feel safe to invest in Israeli founders or Israeli companies. And so we found ourselves closing our company. And he goes, when you're ready to move on to your next thing, let me know. I'm sure we can do something together. I just can't sit still and just donate. I want to move on to offense. We have to do something for Israel. Things are not going to be the same. So this is kind of the origin story of the fund. I can go into the details of what we do and how, but I'll pass it on to you.
The one thing that shocked me quite a lot in Israeli is the massive support that we get from Texas. And in this case, if we can talk about the Texas Venture Partners, we're talking about $100 million fund that most of the money will be raised from Christians, guys in Texas that believe in Israel and love Israel. And so tell us how it works, how we get guys from Texas investing in tech companies or specifically cultivated companies in Israel. And what is the environment and what we can learn from that.
So when I started my AI startup, I looked for the best place to start a business. My perspective was that starting a new company will be hard as it is. Let's do it under the best circumstances. I've shopped around. I've lived before that in Ireland. I was working for LinkedIn at the time, so I've kind of had an understanding of what's going on in Europe. I've spent a year living in London, GMing an education company over there. I spent a year in Australia. I felt like I have a pretty good read on what's available for entrepreneurs, and undoubtedly, Texas was the place. It was friendly, it was rich in capital, in talent, it was welcoming, and it felt like we're still building that ecosystem. So for me, I went there. Very quickly, I found out that there are more people like me who came there to start a business, and then we started seeing the similarities between Texas and Israel. So
you know what, let's try something. Who's been in this room, been in Texas ever? Okay. Who's been in New York? All right. So that tells a lot. When I first time came to Texas a few years ago, I said, why the hell Texas? Texas is about oil and cows. So what the hell tech is doing here? So give us guys just an understanding of what's going on over there. It's quite amazing.
It is quite amazing, and beyond the traditional industries, which we'll talk about in a second, I think Texas has something to offer that other places don't, especially for me, especially now, and that it's very, very pro-Israel. So many of you in this room haven't been to Texas, but if I ask you Texas, there's a mental image of what Texas is about. It's probably wrong, right? Same way, if you'll ask your friends abroad, like, what do they think of Israel? They'll do something from the news. It's usually wrong and not great. So I would challenge you to kind of go through and break those prejudices and come and see what the country is all about, because what Israel and Texas share are the values of, we believe in entrepreneurship, we believe in risk-taking, we believe in freedom and liberty. And this is such a great platform to build companies in. A small government, less regulation, go for it. Failure is legitimized where in other ecosystems it isn't. So this for me was the biggest attraction. Now let's talk for a second about the industry, about the people who end up investing in our fund. And full disclosure, out of a $100 million fund, it's not there yet, and it's very hard. It's hard for a few reasons, maybe for a different discussion. So what is going on in Texas? First of all, traditional industries, so the highest number of doctors per capita in the world. So you've got that. You've got traditional industries, so farming, cattle, energy. This is the backbone of the Texas society, but these are industries that are being disrupted or being challenged. These are industries that are forced to think about what's coming, think outside of the future, but what they're lacking is the technological infrastructure that Israel has. So this is what we're trying to do, marrying the Israeli innovation with the business environment in Texas. This is the appeal. And now maybe one point about the people who invest in our fund. When the war broke out and we started knocking on doors and telling people we want to raise money for an Israel fund, as soon as they heard Israel, it went into the tzedakah, the charity pocket, and they said something you probably have heard, like, we've already given. We've given everything we could have given. And we're not asking for a donation, we're asking for an investment. But under that current climate, considering Israel for an investment destination was a little harder than usual. So we had to take a different approach. And that approach said, who would want to be a part of that Israeli story, but haven't had the opportunity to do so? And this is when we realized that we can connect the investment in energy, in health, in defense, and tie it to what Texans care about, which are those areas, and in a large regard, Israel as well. So this is kind of the connective tissue of the two ecosystems.
Yeah. The main reason that I wanted to be here, maybe Wolf will say something about Lauren Ebony, which is the general partner, the managing partner of the fund. He's a long-term food tech investor with over 23 personal investment. He also built several funds, agronomics, and more. So I think in this case we have a very warm approach towards food tech, understanding that it's meaningful. And maybe we have like one last minute. What do you suggest to entrepreneurs and companies that would like to to contact you, what you are looking for, specifically in the cultivated meat, and what will be the best way to approach you?
So approaching me, tal@texasventurepartners.com or ts@texasventurepartners.com. Our website's up. You can look us up there. I'm more available than I would like to be, and I'm sure many of you feel the same, so easy to find, and we respond to everything. So that is one. We're a seed stage company. We invest $1 to $4 million in seed stage companies, and there's some flexibility around it depending on the opportunity. What was the other one?
What you're looking entrepreneurs.
Okay. What do we look for in entrepreneurs? So our thesis is non-traditional. Some VCs will invest in B2B SaaS, in pre-seed, in the future of work. We take a different perspective. We look into the world and we're seeing a connection between Brexit, COVID, trade wars, supply chain disruptions, war in Ukraine, war in Israel. We found a thread that connects those isolated events, and that thought is called deglobalization. Our world is changing. Nations and multinational corporations are racing to bulletproof or future-proof their economies. They're facing economic contraction, less collaboration, demographic challenges, challenges of sovereignty. So with this prism in mind, this is the companies we're looking for. If you can fit the story of increased sovereignty, of self-reliance, this is something we'd be interested in. In the life sciences, it's demographic challenges. How can we protect our population, aging population, or collapsing demographics? This is what we're interested in, and maybe 3 takeaways for me. So number one, with the geopolitical thesis, I know you're solving serious problems. We can't tell you what processes or molecules to look into, but we can tell you, look outside of the lab into what's going on in the world and try and see where your company fits in a narrative that may feel a little abstract, but also very much urgent. The other thing I would urge you to do is consider Texas. It's a friendly, welcoming home that's hungry for innovation, hungry for entrepreneurship, and it rewards it. And lastly, we've got your back. Lorne is set for life. I could have done other things, but we couldn't see what's going on in Israel without responding to it. And as hard as it is, we're committing to bringing innovation and capital back into that ecosystem.
Thank you very much. You're going to get more from Tal, but for me it was very heartwarming to see that we have friends like that are here in support. And I wish you all the best and success. You're going to find the best companies here in Israel.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.